Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this planning meeting of the Melton Borough Council. I want to thank everybody for this later start time, and I do apologise. It was due to a planning inspector who then went off ill, so we could have had it earlier, but unfortunately it was too late to actually change the time. Especially to those that are Forest fans or curling fans, I'm afraid you're missing things. But I'm Councillor Alan Thwaites, the Chair of Planning, and I will be chairing this meeting. Just some housekeeping. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist anyone who needs any assistance. Please put your phone to silent during this meeting, and the meeting will be live streamed on YouTube this evening. Members speaking, please raise your hand if you wish to speak and speak directly into the microphone in front of you. Remember to turn it off once you have finished. Members voting will be by raised hands. I'd like to introduce those present this evening. The members here this evening, to my right, are councillors Jim Adcock, Pip Allnutt, Ian Atherton, Alison Freer, substituting for Councillor Holmes, and Marilyn Gordon. Oh, sorry, Ronan. Sorry, did I miss you out, Ronan? Sorry, and Ronan. To my left, Councillor James Mason, Margaret Glancy, Lee Higgins, and Don Pritchett. We have a team of officers present who are to my left, the Assistant Director for Governance and Democracy, Clive Tobin. To my right, Planning Development Manager, Louise Parker. Assistant Director for Planning, Sarah Legg. Planning Officer, Graham Smith. We also have a Democratic Services team present assisting with the technology and taking the minutes. That's Ellen Hange and Sarah Evans. So first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. And as I just mentioned, Councillor Holmes has given me apologies, and Councillor Freer is present as substitute for Councillor Holmes. Otherwise, we've got a full house, so I assume there's no other apologies. So agenda item 2, the minutes. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October 2025. Do I have a proposer for the minutes? Councillor Allnutt, and a seconder? Councillor Atherton. So is anybody got anything they wish to add to the minutes? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. Yeah, it's on the last line of PL 29 for the minutes. It's got potential congestion caused by parents collecting children from school by car. If you could add in there, potential congestion caused by parents dropping off and collecting children from school by car, please. Thank you.
Thank you. No objection to that addition? No? In that case, I'd like to put that set of minutes with that amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the minutes, please raise your hands. 3, 6, 7, 8, 8, 4. Thank you. That carried. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Members to declare any interest as appropriate in respect of items to be considered at this meeting. Councillor Brown, I remember this time.
Yeah, cheers, thank you. I'm going to declare an interest in 4.2. The reason being is perceived bias, and just for members around the table, I work for a new employer where I'm head of property development and housing management. We also deal with children's services. We have contracts with Leicester County Council around supported living, and I have the potential to be negotiating on new build and other contracts with the County Council. So I think it'd be completely inappropriate for me to sit in that meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Allnutt.
There's no reason for me to leave the meeting, but I should mention that in my capacity as leader of the council in an executive role, I have previously written to 2 secretaries of state under successive governments with respect to the number of children's homes in small villages being a problem as a matter of policy, but it doesn't affect my judgment in this particular case.
it's a matter for yourself as long as you're satisfied that it doesn't influence your judgment in any way.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So we'll move on to the schedule of applications. The first one, 4.1, the application 24/00187/FUL, the land adjacent to Keeper's Lodge, Denton Lane, Harston. And I believe Graham is going to make the presentation. So thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an application for a change of use to 5 lodges and 10 static caravans for holiday use only. The application site is to the south of Denton Lane. Members probably remember that the application was originally, originally accessed off of the drift, the lane to the side of the site. However, there were objections from Lincolnshire County Council, it being on the boundary between the two, and that element was dropped from the application. So we have an amended access now onto Denton Lane itself, which is in Leicestershire. This is a modest rural tourism proposal located on the boundary with South Kesteven. It's a rural tourism proposal. The report considers the access to public transport and areas of service facilities to be reasonable. The application has been subject to a number of concerns, and officers have sought to work proactively in accordance with policy SS1 of the adopted local plan. Officers have considered the impact on the wider landscape, considered in detail in the report, and the local landscape impact. The applicant has submitted a business plan on the 27th of January, giving details of the operation and predicted benefits to the local economy in order to address policy EC8. Members' attention are drawn in the committee report to representations as summarised in section 6 of this report. Next slide, please. We received a further representation from agents representing the Welby estate, and they considered the application as been submitted in a piecemeal manner, being unfair to local residents, repeatedly reviewing new material, placing unnecessary burden on officials, on officers, and undermines the integrity of the planning process. There are clear reasons, in his view, in policy terms, why the application should be refused. And suggesting a refusal at an earlier stage would have avoided the prolonged and inefficient assessment of poorly assembled submission. In the light of the new information, the business plan, the objector considers the council should undertake a full reconsultation to ensure that all interested parties, particularly those who have already raised objections, are given adequate time to review the additional material and respond meaningfully. Transparency and fairness, in his view, in decision making are essential, and the current process risks compromising both. However, he further states that notwithstanding any reconsultation, given the procedural shortcomings, the cumulative deficiency in the submission and the avoidable strain placed on residents and officers, he respectfully urges the council to refuse the application. Next slide, please. And then we've received a further representation on behalf of Belvoir Parish Council. This is regarding biodiversity net gain. The Parish Council raises concerns regarding the delivery of 10% BNG if the provision is outside of the red line of the site. It requires a section 106. The parish considers land within the blue line should be registered and allocated to the development on the gain site register with Natural England, and a gain site has to be secured by a legal agreement. The Parish Council is concerned regarding tree planting condition and suggests it should be altered, identifying and clarifying whether it is either in the red line or the blue line of the sites, and whether it's to provide BNG objectives. They're also concerned regarding the failure to provide a BNG monitoring fee, which should also be via a legal agreement. Then the objection turns to the business case and highlights concerns about permitted development rights that could use the site for recreational campsite for up to 60 days and request the council remove permitted development rights. They also request conditions regarding an employment plan to include details of measures to engage with local trades and how any local employment opportunities will be advertised locally, giving local prioritisation. Then finally, reference is made to a possible condition regarding the play area, and could a condition requiring such be included and includes safety aspects, the management of the play area, and also additional visitor parking spaces. Next slide, please. Then just a brief mention on matters raised at the members' briefing. One of the things was about the bus route, which is either outside of the development itself, and I'll show a photograph of that later, or from the village of Harston itself 4 times a day. Nearest facilities in terms of pubs, there's one in Denton, there's one in Woolsthorpe, and the major shopping areas, of course, in Grantham. Condition 3 on the section 9 of your report limits numbers of units, and any additional requires further consent. Condition 4 limits it to a holiday use only, prohibiting occupation beyond 31 days. This includes the requirement to keep a register of occupation to be maintained. After further consideration from officers, a replacement of condition 15, which has been pointed out to me as a duplicate condition, will seek the removal of the PD rights for temporary uses, i.e. recreational camping. Access was also, members also drew attention to the access drawings. This is included in the access note dated the 7th of August. It is on the website. We spoke to County Highways and they pointed out that the detailed design drawings will be required under section 278 works. And then finally, there was a definition of sustainable tourism was requested. Difficult to actually pin that down, but one such definition refers to the fact that sustainable tourism is grounded in established planning principles and aligned with the NPPF approach to sustainable development. Next slide, please. Then a response to the late representation from Belvoir Parish Council regarding the BNG. I do have a detailed sheet which we were going to include, but if any members require details, I'm happy to read that out. This is just the summary of that. The BNG requirement will be secured appropriately through the Section 106 agreement. The applicants will be required to submit a compliant biodiversity gain plan before commencement. Off-site units cannot be counted unless legally secured and registered, which the legal agreement will ensure. Monitoring fees will be secured through the legal agreement, so there is no cost to the council. The proposal therefore remains fully compliant with the Environment Act 2021 and BNG framework and the requirements of Schedule 7. Next slide, please. This is the roundup of the conditions. I won't read the first condition out. That is the replacement to condition 15, and it is the removal of the PD rights. Then secondly, landscaping condition number 6, paragraph 9.6 shall be altered to make clear proposals could relate to land within the blue line and whether they relate to the BNG. And then regards submission of an employment plan, an additional condition, condition number 26, to include details of measures the applicant will be undertaking to engage the local traders and businessmen during the construction, and also how any employment opportunities would be created and advertised locally. and giving prioritisation to the locals. Wording for those conditions will be finalised by officers. It is worth pointing out this will need to be proportionate to the modest scale of the development. And then finally, an additional planning condition to address the issues of the play area. Details to be required as condition number 27. And again, wording left for officers requiring the details, relevant safety requirements and visitor parking. And then finally, further representation was received from the ward councillor following an email from an objector stating the council is very concerned with the application, although giving no details. Then just a slight reply to the Welby Estates comments. Officers have replied, the submission of additional evidence in support of the application does not in itself require reconsultation. Nevertheless, the public website was updated on receipt of the evidence and included further representations. Comments received from the objectors were obviously aware of the submission on the website detailing the actual submission of further evidence. Also, the applicant's submission is in drawn out packages, whilst perhaps regrettable, is not a reason on which to refuse applications. Next slide, please. This is the location site plan and showing the amended vehicular access to Denton Lane. It shows the static caravans and the 5 lodges to the south. It's approximately 200 metres from Denton Lane to the nearest static caravan. Next slide, please. This is the most detailed access drawing that we have following the councillor's concerns. This was accepted by the local highway authority, although, as I said to you before, that they will have to provide a more detailed drawing from this at the 278 stage. Next slide, please. This shows the visibility requirements. It is a 60-mile-an-hour road, so the visibility requirements are quite considerable. However, as the photograph shows, the verge in front of the trees and the hedgerow is quite significant. So it actually results in very little of the trees and hedgerow to be removed for visibility reasons. Next slide, please. You can almost see the wooden bus shelter, which is actually on the corner of Denton Lane and the Drift on the photograph on the left there. And then a view of the bus route from Grantham to Harston, as shown on the bus website. The only thing I need to point out is that there is a loop at the bottom there, and it won't always mean that bus services will go or stop outside the site. But if you can't get on a bus outside the site, you'll need to walk the 2/3 of a mile into Harston to the bus stop, which actually is there on Woolsthorpe Lane. Next slide, please. This is the lodge details submitted with the original application. Just pointing out that the ridge height of the lodge is 3.5 metres, and it shows a skirt around the lodges themselves. Next slide, please. This is details of static caravans. I think these are 2.9 metres high to the ridge height. Next slide, please. And this shows the foul water drainage system, which there's suggested will be proposed. It is actually subject to details required by a planning condition, and it has included an filtration element requested by our own environmental health officer to be a more ecologically beneficial system. Next slide, please. This was details attached to the BNG proposals. It does show some planting proposals outside of the red line of the site, which was referred to being within the blue line, i.e. in the control of the applicant. Next slide, please. And after discussions about concerns about the impact on the landscape of the new access road, the applicant has submitted indicative tree planting. The road would then be sandwiched between tree planting and the hedge to the west. Next slide, please. Photographs of the site. The one on the left is Denton Lane, again showing that wide verge. And then the one on the right is a view southwards, showing the western edge of the site, and that's where the road would be running down the side of that hedge, and then wouldn't be visible from the west. Next slide, please. And then photographs view northwest, indicating the slope of the site. And then on the top right there, those red lines show roughly where the Keeper's Lodge house is, and where the existing single-storey agricultural building, which you can see at the bottom there, sits. But it shows that they cannot be seen from Denton Lane. Next slide, please. View towards the tree belt that obscures the Keeper's Lodge house on the western edge of the site. Next slide, please. And a view of the junction of Denton Lane and the Drift, which is the main access to Keeper's Lodge. Next slide, please. Just to show the eastern edge of Harston Village facing the development. Next slide, please. And a view across the fields towards the village of Denton from the west side of the Drift. And then a view to the south from the Drift, showing substantial visual screening either side of the track. Next slide, please. So in summary, consideration has been given to the landscape character in great detail in the report. Single-storey units in a low-lying area with retained hedgerows and new tree planting, resulting in minimal visual impact from the main public thoroughfares. Minimal harm has been identified at the top of the site, where the new access opens the hedgerow. However, landscaping conditions proposed, potential tree planting and roads situated next to an existing hedgerow, and the minimal loss of hedgerows because of the wide verge, it is considered that the extent of harm would be minimal. There is no harm to heritage assets. There is no harm to neighbouring residential amenity. It is for holiday use only. Any additional lodges or static caravans requires further permission, would also be subject to licensing controls. And now with an additional condition, no PD rights will exist for camping. And in ecology and B&G terms, considered acceptable, subject to the signing of a legal agreement, ensuring the off-site land is bound for the required 30-year period and provides any necessary monitoring fees. The amended vehicular access is in Leicestershire and the LHA has no objection. Planning conditions safeguard the water and drainage concerns. Next slide, please. So it is considered the proposals accord with the adopted local plan, and the recommendation is for approval subject to conditions as proposed in section 9 of the report and as amended. Condition 6, landscaping altered. Condition 15, replaced with the removal of PD rights. Condition 26 for employment plan, and condition 27, play area details added and wording provided by officers. And the permission will be subject to a legal agreement to ensure the B&G land outside the red line areas is registered as a gains site and is bound to the permission for the required 30-year period and includes any B&G monitoring costs. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Just before I ask any other councillors for any questions for clarification, can I just ask, and apologies if I missed it, but there is a specific condition about the supply of water or proving the supply of water. Can you just take me through that one again, please?
Just bear with me while I find the condition. I think it's condition number 24. It'll be in section. Yes, no condition including the siting or installation of any holiday lodges, static caravans or associated accommodation units should take place until written evidence has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority, confirming that the development hereby permitted will be served by, and then it goes on to refer to a potable water supply with a detailed water demand calculation and source and capacity verification.
Yeah, apart from the slight spelling mistake that's in there at the minute, but because it says portable water, so I think that's but I think it's quite a distinct definition there. So nothing would be able to until they proved that there was a sufficient water supply for that size of development, the size of number of people.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I'd like to open up to any other councillors. Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chair. When I was at the site last year, when we started to discuss this whole application, there is already on site a static caravan that's lived in with block paving around it that uses the access off the drift. Is that still there? Because it's not shown on any of the plans. And indeed, the drainage plan that you put up on screen earlier on shows the reed bed and the sand filter going exactly where the existing static caravan is or was.
Through you, Chair. Yes, on site there is a caravan. It's quite close to the trees around the actual house. I asked the applicant about that, and the applicant stated that caravan was there whilst works were undertaken on the house.
So I'm not talking. Yeah, sorry, Chair. I'm not talking about a mobile caravan that indeed was adjacent to the trees. I'm talking about a static caravan that looked very permanent, not temporary.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that is the caravan I was talking about.
Any other councillors have any questions for clarification? No, in that. Oh, sorry, Jim, carry on. Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. There's reference to license controls as well. Perhaps you could just clarify what those would relate to.
Again, through you, Chair, the report refers to licensing discussion with our licensing department or section. They are controls which will take place. They are completely separate to planning. They will only take place if planning permission is granted, first of all, and then the applicant will be required to submit an application for licensing, and that they relate to a multitude of things. How the actual site is laid out in terms of separation distances between the caravans, the electricity supply, etc., etc. It goes into far more detail, not just about the land use merits of a planning application, if that helps.
Yes.
Councillor Freer.
Thank you, Chair. Just as a substitute, I've probably missed this information, but there seems to be a lot of weight added to the fact that this is holiday let only, and if planning permission was to be allowed, that's obviously one of the mandatory conditions. How is that proposed to be monitored, and that is actually happening? Because obviously the local, our planning department's not got a lot of officers that can go out and look at sites all the time, and we've not just got this one. So how do we propose to ensure that these conditions and that happens? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'll come on to my learned colleagues in a moment, but and as within all enforcement, we haven't got any enforcement. Nobody's got enough enforcement to watch every building site and every piece of place. So it obviously has to rely a lot on the local population reporting it if they believe it's not being used in that way, but we have the option to actually check. I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add, Graham?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, only to confirm that the condition exists. I'm just going to pinpoint which one that is, and I can read it to you. Bear with me again. Condition 4, I think.
Sorry, through you, Chair. I mean, the condition exists. I don't need to hear it. I'm just interested on how we will monitor it and uphold it. That's all.
I think we'd only be able to uphold it if it was reported by the local residents as being abused. The point I will add probably to the end of yours is, so what would be the impact out if it was proved to be being abused? What would be the impact on it? Can you remove the planning permission, or is it just a fine type situation?
Thank you, Chair. So as per usual planning enforcement guidelines, we have to set the conditions to meet the 6 tests, being reasonable, necessary and enforceable being one of those tests. As with anything, if we receive evidence to say that there is a breach taking place, then we will go out on site, we will monitor, and we will take enforcement action when it is necessary and if it is necessary. I think the question with regards to enforcement, it's the case of having evidence if a breach has occurred, and then obviously being proportionate and responding to that evidence at the time.
Councillor Gordon, sorry.
Yeah, it does say in the papers as well that whenever anybody comes to let one of these caravans or lodges, that they have to give their full name and address of where they permanently live, and obviously how long they're going to stay. So there's lots of information that has to be given when somebody does let one of those holiday lodges, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. But as I understand, Councillor Freer, yeah, it needs to be monitored in that way. Councillor Higgins.
I know what the officers just said, and but in terms of enforcement, the lived experience for the, and I'm not going to talk about any particular case that's in my ward, but when residents have raised enforcement matters, and to quite a substantial amount, I don't think the lived experience from their point of view is that the matters are investigated within a reasonable period of time. So when the officer states that to this committee of making a decision from the question that was earlier, we have to be a bit careful of, because that's the perfect world, but the perfect world doesn't exist. And so I would like the officer to go back and inform the committee of what the reality is rather than the perfect world, because that's not the experience my residents are experiencing on another matter. I'll leave that there.
Chair, I think we need to avoid getting too tied up in this issue of enforcement resources, because as the planning officer said, there is a test for the suitability of conditions to be attached. Obviously, you've got to look at that in the round with the application when you're weighing it up. But if you were to take that view, you would never grant any planning permission for anything, because you could breach absolutely any provision in any condition. So that's not the test, and no weight should be attached to that.
Thank you. Any further questions for clarification before I call on the first speaker? No? In that case, then I'd like to call on Rebecca Sells, the legal advisor for Belvoir Parish Council. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. I think you've been given a quick briefing on how to use the microphone. Once you start talking, you'll have 3 minutes. About 30 seconds from the end, either Clive or myself will give you a quick warning to say it's coming towards the end. If you could then please carry and finish by then stay for any questions for clarification. Thank you very much. So when you feel ready, please press the button and start when you're ready.
Fine. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. I'm speaking on behalf of Belvoir Parish Council. The Parish Council appreciate the work which officers have put into the application to date, but the Parish Council still have concerns regarding the sustainability of the site. Policy EC8 requires sustainable rural tourism. The site is not in a sustainable location, given Harston is 1 kilometre away and Denton is 2.2. The nearest bus stop is in Harston with only 4 buses per day to Grantham. The Parish Council do not believe that the shelter on Denton Lane is an active bus stop. The bus service is Monday to Friday only, with no services at weekends or on bank holidays. The nearest pub is in Denton. The nearest small shop is in Nipton, 3.2 kilometres away. Whilst the applicant's agent states that this is reasonable for a tourism site, there are no footpaths to these locations. Therefore, holiday makers would be heavily reliant on cars or otherwise have to walk along the unlit 60-mile-an-hour road. Such increased traffic and carbon emissions are contrary to the sustainable development principles in the NPPF and the local plan. There are already a number of holiday accommodation sites within the Leicestershire-Lincolnshire border. The application does not include any demand for additional holiday accommodation in this area or include a formal needs assessment. The applicant's business case does not include any financial detail or demonstrate any past experience of running a business such as this. Therefore, the Parish Council question the longer-term viability of this site. Policy SS2 supports development in the open countryside, which is necessary and appropriate, but given the number of existing similar facilities and a lack of demonstrated additional need, this development is not considered to be necessary. Paragraph 88 of the NPPF states that planning decisions should enable sustainable rural tourism developments which respect the character of the countryside, but this scheme is not in a sustainable location and will inevitably affect the character of the landscape. Noting the officer's recommendation for approval, the parish previously submitted their comments on the proposed conditions, which they appreciate have now been picked up. Lincolnshire County Council's neighbouring Highways Authority objected to the use of the drift for the construction traffic as it's an unsurfaced highway. Given this objection, the council should ensure there is no vehicular access to the site from the drift and that all construction traffic uses the proposed access from Denton Lane to be secured within the construction traffic management plan. Draft condition 24 should also refer to a potable water supply. In summary, the Parish Council asks that members consider the sustainability of the site, both in terms of location and the longer-term viability, and refuse the application. If members are minded to approve, the parish asks that their points in relation to the proposed conditions are considered and that council officers provide their assurances that these conditions will be proactively monitored and stringently enforced. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much. I'll open it. Is there any members wish to ask any questions for clarification? No, can I just ask one then? You mentioned similar sites within the area. Which sites? Do you have a list of those sites or example of the sites which are close?
Not with me. I appreciate there's cottages attached to Belvoir Castle itself. There's glamping sites and caravan sites further away towards Grantham. There is holiday accommodation available along that border that would be accessing Belvoir Castle or the other landmarks.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Next, I'd like to call upon Angela Simmons from Mark Simmons Planning Services Limited. Thank you, Angela. Thank you for coming along this evening. You had the instructions, so when you're ready and you're ready to start, please press the face in the middle so it turns red, and then you'll have 3 minutes when you start talking. Please carry on.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. This application has been in the planning system for over 2 years, and during this period we have had a number of planning officers. We have tirelessly worked with each officer to overcome a number of issues raised by statutory consultees. This has led to a number of revisions to the design, especially in terms of highways, which has seen a new access created, which now avoids any conflict with the established rights of way on the drift lane. We would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every officer who has assisted through this process. Additional information has been submitted, but this was directly to address consultation responses, which respectfully is the usual part of the planning process. Our client's dream is to provide a high-quality tourism facility, which will not only financially support his young family, but also bring rural economic prosperity to this area, which will enhance and endorse your existing attractions. With regard to this principle of the proposal is supported by local and national tourism policies, promoting the economy and creating jobs. The layout and the design of this proposal has been kept modest and organic in style, so as to complement the natural landscape with generous landscaping to assure its coalescence into the natural beauty of the area. Significant tree planting is proposed, and in terms of landscape and design, the proposal again is considered to be policy compliant, as well as providing an uplift in biodiversity net gain meeting the statutory legal requirements. Public engagement was carried out in good faith, and where possible, concerns were addressed. However, as with any new development, not all objectors can be pacified, especially in matters which are not, on occasion, bona fide material planning concerns. However, the changes made to the scheme in line with the statutory consultee concerns have gone some way to address the majority of objections. And we would ask the committee to consider that in terms of planning policy, your professional planning officer has assessed this proposal as compliant. We'd also ask the committee to reflect on their site visit when they would have viewed the fundamental lack of immediate or indeed nearby neighbours of the proposal, which somewhat negates any kind of adverse amenity impacts for residents. The site is actually rather hidden from public views. To conclude, we fully endorse your planning officer's positive recommendation. Respectfully, we have achieved a policy-compliant tourism proposal, and we ask you to support a local family in their tourism venture and approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do any councillors, members wish to ask any questions for clarification? Councillor Freer.
Thank you. There was a part of the statement that talked about consultation and that there was a number of objections received and a lot of work is done to overcome those objections. And you mentioned that obviously you can't always overcome all the objections. Did you overcome any?
Yeah, I think the main issue we had was with this, as your case officer mentioned, was with the water and ensuring that we had water at the site, and that was all achievable. But I think the main issue we had was with the Drift Road. And I'm sure many of you have fundamentally, you've been up and down that Drift Road. It is quite a difficult road. And because the first part of it would only be affected by the proposal initially, we thought that that would be okay, especially if we put signage up and that kind of thing. And also we've thought about doing sort of instructions in the booking sort of arena. So booking got that doing instructions, but their highways authority quite rightly still maintain their concerns. So then we had to completely have a rethink of the access within our client's land, and we've come up with a revised access strategy which removes any conflict from the Drift Road, which I think is better in safety terms.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't mention objections, I mentioned objectors. Have any objectors changed their mind or done have now instead of objecting have gone for the development? That's what I meant. Thanks, Chair.
There's no problem. So can I just clarify something you said? So during construction there would be no use of the drift in your current plan?
Yeah, we'd have plans to avoid any kind of conflict with users of the Drift Road during the whole construction phase. Sorry,
so is that there would be no use of the drift entrance?
Obviously, our client would have access to his property, and but anything additional over above that through construction and through the use of the tourism site, there'd be no conflict with the Drift Road.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from any other councillors? No. Thank you very much for your time. Therefore, I'll open the application for debate. Would any councillors like to be the first one into the fray? We have a recommendation for approval. I think, well, everybody's thinking about what they were trying to. I'll just finish what I was going to say. In the fact that I think we need to make sure that the construction plan achieves what we've just heard, that there is no use of the drift during the construction phase. But Councillor Brown.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just get things going and hopefully others will follow in. Yeah, obviously we've got a well-written report, so thanks to the officer. It's very clear. It says it's policy compliant, etc. My only concern is that lack of detail of everything, and some of the comments made around, will it be sustainable? Can you get the conditions are all there to prevent that, but it is pretty isolated. Out in a very remote area of the Vale of Belvoir. you're going to have to drive to Grantham, maybe most likely the place you'll go and get your shopping and your bits and pieces, etc. If there's any medical emergencies and stuff like that there, you're going to have to drive to Grantham again. At least there is a hospital in A&E and stuff there as well. So is that question really around, is it really sustainable? Is it, and do the numbers of caravans, will it stack up as a business, would be something that in my mind is that usually when you see these places, you're talking, 30, 40 units it's all volume like that. We all work in business, everything works on volume. But said that, the officers are putting across a case to say it is, it is compliant and it should be approved, etc. So at the moment, I'm sitting here 50-50 going, what's right, what impact would it have on the local. The other thing that does concern me is these comments about transport and buses and stuff. And let's be realistic, we're probably going to see a reduction in buses rather than an increase in buses and the weekend. And let's be honest, we all go on holidays, we all go to holiday parks and stuff, or we have done so. And we all tend to use a car, etc. I think Councillor Higgins talked about the reality and what might be the utopia. The reality is that's what will happen. So hopefully that gives others a little bit of a feed in, on that balanced sort of approach.
Councillor Higgins.
Yeah, just and this is just an observation, and it's probably not really relevant necessarily to the planning side of it. But officers can say this. So this is just every unit is static, lodges and static caravan. I think this probably would have more comfort if this was more where people could take a caravan or a camper van, because people sometimes don't mind driving to some remote place, and you see those up and down the country, and that then, and you can get some static and then some temporary, where you camper vans and take your own caravan. That all said, I just feel it would be more beneficial if it would be a more campsite that you see up and down the country. But going back to being static and listening to the reading the objections, I think there is real concern of people fearing it might turn into not tourism. So I'm being asked to make a decision on tourism, and I think it's probably policy compliant to tourism. If it starts changing something else, I wouldn't be giving this where someone was to live there, because that would be totally unsustainable. So that's the concern, or the question I may have to the officers is, if I say yes to tourism, the benefits it brings, and because some people do like to go to remote places in the middle of totally nowhere. But I don't think I'd want somebody necessarily to live there.
No, I agree. And I'll put an alternative view to that, which is that if it was mobile caravans and mobiles, it'd be easier for it to be abused in a different way. So the fact that it is static. But going on to a point that the clarification that I asked for was, is there anything similar nearby? I think there are places where there are lots of travelling caravans and motorhomes, places for those sort of things. But when we looked at the different sites and we've travelled around the Vale, there isn't that many sites similar to this. So that's where I was sort of leaning the other way to say that basically, is it adding something slightly new? It's not totally new, obviously, because there's lots of them about, but there's not a lot locally to that area. And it is a tourism area. It's an area that we publish ourselves as a tourism area. So I'm looking at it from a slightly different point of view to the one you've said. Any other? Councillor Atherton.
Yeah, I think I share concerns that have been expressed by others, and I'm sure others are thinking them privately at the moment. I'm not totally convinced of the business need, but that in and of itself is not a prime planning concern. What does concern me is access to public transport, because it's as good as nil. And to state that an alternative is to walk 2/3 of a mile down an unlit country road with a 60-mile-an-hour speed limit is, quite frankly, insulting in some ways. It's just not viable. That and the fact that the bus service, as stated, is sporadic. It doesn't always pass the site, is not available at weekends, and is likely in current financial climates to be reduced, not increased. That worries me. I'm also concerned about the lack of potable water, drinking water, fresh water. And I think there's more work to be done in that area at the moment. All that said, I can't find any policy reason to say no to this, albeit my heart says it's probably not viable long term, might be short term, but I'm not convinced long term. That's, to me, that's not a primary planning consideration.
Thank you. One of the things I meant to say when I was answering Councillor Higgins was that we can't speculate what may happen to a site going forward. All we can do is actually put the conditions in that we're saying. And on the water one, that it's the condition that it has to be sufficient for that number of estimated people, and they have to prove that before the planning permission actually becomes valid. So that gives me. Sorry, Councillor Olnupson then.
Chair, I'm going to get a pair of tweezers out because a lot of my colleagues sitting on the fence at the moment, and I'm going to be quite bold and say there's no way you can refuse this application on the grounds that have been evidenced here tonight or in the documents. It is a clear, I think it's absolutely clear that this has to be approved. Now, when we looked at it before, I did produce a document that had been provided to me by the Anglian Water Authority, and I raised my concerns, the same as Councillor Atherton, about the water issue. The conditions are quite clear. At the very worst, one of the watering companies is going to get some consumption that they're not getting paid for, and possibly somebody using a shower on the site might find the pressure makes it go a bit cold, shall we say. But those conditions have to be resolved before it's approved, as I understand it. So the point that was made about our ability as a council to ensure that that is done is a pertinent one for the council, but it's not a pertinent one for this committee. So that's how I go about it. Now, in terms of sustainability, yeah, I mean, there's a family here starting a business. Now, presumably they think that there is scope for that business to thrive. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing it. And it's not the job of this council to assess their business plan. It's not not in that sense. I take the point about the transport, but you know, people going to camps to caravan sites of this nature tend to go to park. They get there by car and they park, and they spend a lovely time in the rain cooking and eating and throwing a ball at a child that's running around in the field, etc. And then they go out for the day. And what do? They don't go on a bus. By and large, they may get the bicycles out, and that's a possibility. You see that, or they get in the car and they go and visit somewhere. Now, I know that in the area generally, the Vale of Belvoir, there's a problem about congestion, but it doesn't come from these sites. It comes from a rather large monument just up the road, where they can't even run a firework display without getting in a tangle. So, and that's where we as a council have got to focus outside the planning. We need to focus on that particular organisation, ancient as it is. So I'm quite clear. I think as it stands, with all the conditions, and we will have a major job to ensure that the conditions are sorted. I don't want anyone just taking the word of the applicant that it's been done, you know, like a tick box. Somebody has to go out and check it with the experts. That's the key thing. We mustn't take their word. So I'm happy to move the recommendation, Chair.
Just before I take that, I've got Councillor Gordon said she would like to make a comment. Councillor Gordon.
I was wondering, it's just a suggestion, if this does go through, that this company could have some sort of an agreement with the bus company. And I know that happens, it has happened in Melton.
I don't think that's within our remit,
unfortunately. Right.
Yeah.
We just thought a nominal fee, perhaps, but
thanks for the suggestion. But yeah, I think
okay.
Outside my wide remit, I don't think we can do that. Sorry, Councillor Mason.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry, I did beg your pardon.
Don, would you like to go first? No.
Speak before a seconding.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Mason then. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things regarding the water, regarding the potable water. I'm less concerned about the caravan site. I'm more concerned about the area around it. In my ward, not an I's ward, we suffer from a large scale developments, and the water supply is actually starting to suffer because of that. It is the surrounding area that I'm concerned about, and I want to be absolutely clear, and I want to make it clear now, that it's okay making certain that this caravan site, or call it what you want, can supply water. It is at what cost to the surrounding area. That's that, and I'm absolutely required to see that belt and braces calculated, and if need be, the infrastructure to the surrounding area upgraded to allow for it. And that's why I made, or that's why I waxed lyrical on this before, and I want to make it absolutely clear. If that's the case, is that not possible that particular, because everybody seems to have a concern about potable water, can that come back to committee so we can be absolutely assured that that's the case? That's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't think that road, I don't know, I've not seen the design of the road in or out of the site, would take a great deal of caravan traffic, i.e. mobile traffic. I think that's fair to say. So static is the way forward, and I would hate to think that in the future that mobile would come on stream. But having said all that, I do share the view of Councillor Allnut, and I would happily second the motion.
Can I just clarify, would you like an amendment to the condition on water to say that there is no impact on the local area?
It says that. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think it says that, but we need to ensure that. And I think that needs to be absolutely ensured, and that's why I would want it to come back to committee, so we are assured as a committee that's been taken care of.
Thank you, Chair. So there is no automatic return to committee. However, as per normal application standards, it will be advertised and there'll be an opportunity for members to call in the application if appropriate.
Councillor Brown.
Yeah, just really a question following on from the lady who presented on behalf of the Parish Council. I didn't manage to write all it down, and it's up to the proposer and the seconder as well. On this point, is all their concerns addressed in the conditions? I think most of them are, but I don't know whether that'd be something that you just clarify. It's up to you as the proposer, or you as the seconder, if they weren't. But I'd just be a little bit more comfortable if we are going to approve it. And some of them may or may not be achievable. So it's not a trick question. It's just a genuine question to see if the concerns can be addressed.
Sorry, Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you very much, Chair. I share the view of Councillor Allnut, and I would like to commend the report. It's considerable improvement and deals with the emissions that were in the previous report. One thing that is of concern, and it is a concern of the public in these sort of things, that Holiday Park might not be used. Holiday Park people might live there full time. And what can happen in some of the licensing agreements is that for the month of January, or say, they will do a check that you have to record that everybody's got a main home, and that there's a worker on site as a way of making sure that under the licensing regime that it's not used full time. Now, how do we get from the conditions here to that desire in the licensing regime? So I've just been through the conditions, unless I've missed something. How do we get from that, which is a major concern, and I think came up at the discussion, the briefing for the first committee when this was removed. It's that I'm interested in.
Is that not covered by the maximum stay of 30 days that's in the conditions? While they're just reading that, Councillor Glancy, did you want to?
Yes, thank you. Considering this has been on the books and live applications since 2024, I am quite surprised that there's so many conditions that we've had to put in to make this application right. And that's I'm very concerned about that, and especially when I've heard the planning consultant say how the conversations that we've had, but we're still missing a lot of information, so we've had to put all these conditions in to make sure we get it and to make sure this application is fit for purpose. And that it's not officers' fault, please don't get me wrong. I'm very disappointed in that, because I would expect it, had it been on the cards for that length of time, it would have come complete without us having to sort of add even more conditions. I think we're down to 27 now, or even 28 if we want to put in the one about not using the drift for sort of building access. I think it's getting ridiculous. We need better applications in front of us when we're deciding, because this is not right. We shouldn't be doing the work of the planning consultants. That they need to come to us ready done, basically, especially as it's a full application. But bearing that in mind, if we do get all those conditions in place and we make sure that they are adhered to, I am in support of the application. But I'm disappointed that we have such an application before us, which is really poor, to be honest. That we've got to fix it, and that to me is wrong. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, because that also puts an extra load on the planning department, which compounds a problem, which is countrywide. Sorry, I just want to go back to Councillor Pritchett. Are you okay with that? Yeah, is that okay? Councillor Allnutt.
Chair, I didn't quite understand Councillor Ronan Brown's request for inclusion of something in our proposal. Could we ask him to just repeat it? And I'm sure if it's reasonable, we'll include it in.
Yeah, I think the only one I did add was the one about making sure that the building traffic didn't use the drift. But Sarah,
thank you. What I was basically saying, Councillor Allnutt, is just checking with the officers. The lady made a very comprehensive representation to basically say that if we were to approve it, and she mentioned, could she make sure that those issues were addressed in the conditions, etc. All I was asking is, are we minded to ensure that that is the case, if possible? And it was up to you, Councillor Allnutt, as proposer, whether you wanted to do that or not. It's not saying that we should.
On the assumption that the officers captured all the conditions that our representative wanted to add, and that they are okay, I'm happy to include it in. But I need to be certain that they're acceptable in technical terms.
Thank you, Chair. Condition number 8 is the construction management plan. So we have a condition seeking the approval of the details of how the construction will take place. I think what members are saying is be mindful in the discharge of that condition that it ensures that you don't get construction going down the drift, if that's correct.
Yes, that was correct. And just before we take it to the vote, because we have a proposer, Councillor Allnutt, and a secondary, Councillor Pritchett, I just want to make sure that we have captured all of the amendments that we think are needed, which is the water and the construction traffic. Councillor Higgins.
Just got one question, if you're going to go to the vote, and it's just for officers. So is there a way where, so I'm happy to vote positively that this is for tourism. If this ever changes and manifests itself into some more established community, where people are living permanently, I don't think I can lend my support to that because I don't think that's sustainable. So can it be clear that, I mean, that this is my particular vote for it to be positive. Can this committee make it clear that this is voting positively for tourism and not voting for something that becomes a settled community or residential?
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, and I can't think of more of a condition than the fact that you can't live there for more than 31 days, and that's within a period of time. Yeah.
Chair, so no one's going to come back and go change of use, and we go, oh well, you've had that established, so now you can do this. I'm just saying, my vote is only for tourism for no more than 30 days. I'm not agreeing to anyone staying permanently there. That is not how I'm voting.
Absolutely. I mean, it was 31 days actually, to be precise. And there would need to be a change of use going forward from that. And again, we can't speculate outside of that, but it would need to come back for a change of use. So unless there's any other comments, I'd like to take that to the vote. We have a, sorry, carry on.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to clarify exactly what we're voting on, essentially. And Graham, feel free to chip in if I haven't quite got the notes correct here. So there be a legal agreement to secure the biodiversity net gain. The condition 15, which is currently, there's a duplicate of condition 15 in the report. The condition 15 is to be changed to be the withdrawal of permitted development rights for the site to be run as a campsite. There's a change to condition 6, which was to do with the blue line and the landscape.
Yeah.
A new condition 26, which relates to a employment plan for securing local trades, and that would be worded by officers. And a new condition 27, which relates to the securing of the play area in terms of submission of details, safety specifications and parking. And I think that's it. So I just wanted to clarify that's what we're.
Yeah, making sure that the construction plan ensures that the drift is not used for construction traffic.
Yeah. Are you saying you'd like the wording to be inserted into that condition? Yes. Okay. So that's an alteration to condition 8.
Before we have any more puns, are we okay with that? Yeah. Are you okay with the amendments? Councillor Pritchett, you okay with the amendments? Yeah. So therefore, I'd like to put this proposal forward to the vote to accept the planning permission. All those in favour? All those against? So one against, the motion is carried, or the application is carried and is permitted. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to application. Those of you that are concerned, please feel free to leave if you wish. Thank you. I'd like to move on to application 22. Sorry, Councillor Brown will be leaving. Thank you, Graham. Move on to application 22/00154/FUL, Avahan, Waltham Road, Thorpe Arnold. And Louise, I believe you're making the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Since the report was published, 2 late representations have been received. The first is an objection from a nearby resident relating to current occupation, staff behaviour at the front of the property, bin storage and concerns about construction traffic. The second is a representation from the Chairman and Chief Executive of United Children's Services, who supports the application, confirms the home has operated without issue under its lawful use, and highlights the established need for this type of provision. These matters have been fully considered and do not introduce any new material planning issues beyond those already assessed in the report, and as such they do not alter the officer recommendation. We can have the next slide, please. Thank you. So moving to the details of the proposal before you for change of use of existing dwelling C3 to use class C2 residential institution for use as a children's home and erection of a self-contained annex to the rear. This slide shows the proposed block plan layout for the site at Avahan. It illustrates how the new annex would sit within the existing residential curtilage, its relationship with the main building, and the surrounding garden and boundary features. This helps demonstrate that the annex can be accommodated on the site without causing adverse impact on neighbouring properties or the wider setting. Next slide, please. Thank you. So here we have a location plan showing the key features around the site. The yellow star identifies Avahan. The red star shows the location of the proposed annex. The black star shows the approved and completed dwelling under reference 1900284 full, and the blue star marks the 2 bus stops along the A607. This visual helps place the proposal in its wider context, showing the limits to development and the relationship with nearby facilities and recent development. Next slide, please. Thank you. Turning to access and parking, the annex will use the existing access from Waltham Road, and no alterations are required. The local highway authority has confirmed that the development would not result in an unacceptable impact on highway safety, and that it would not create a severe impact on the wider road network. Parking provision meets the expected standards with sufficient space for staff based on the care operation. Overall, the LHA concludes the proposal is acceptable in highway terms. Next slide, please. So these artist impressions show how the proposed annex would appear within the site. The design seeks to reflect a domestic family-style environment rather than an institutional one, and it is arranged to sit comfortably within the existing residential setting. The images demonstrate that the scale, appearance and materials are appropriate and help minimise the visual impact. Next slide, please. So in summary, the proposal provides a self-contained annex that complements the established care use on the site. The local highway authority raised no objections and confirms there would be no unacceptable highway impacts. The application shows that the annex can be accommodated without harm to neighbours or the wider area, including the area of separation, and appropriate planning conditions can ensure the development is managed effectively. There is also a county-wide need for children's care provision supported by Leicestershire County Council. There is an approved certificate of lawfulness confirming care use on this site. Next slide, please. Finally, members, in policy terms, this proposal is for a C2 children's home, so housing mix policies in the local plan and neighbourhood plan do not apply to this type of specialist accommodation. National policy, including the NPPF and the 2023 written ministerial statement, requires councils to meet the needs of groups and specific accommodation requirements, which includes children's homes. However, policies of the development plan remain the starting point for decision making. The proposal complies with local plan policy D1 with a design that respects local character and sits well within the established curtilage, respecting the area of separation. Although the site lies outside the neighbourhood plan settlement boundary, this policy conflict is not supported by any identified harm and must be weighed against strong material considerations, including the social need and established care use. Therefore, the recommendation is approval subject to conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louise. And I'm just going to say, although Councillor Allnutt went out during the presentation, he's come back before the end of it, so he was aware of all the information that was in there. So, Councillor Higgins, you. So I'm afraid you won't be. If we start the discussion, we won't be able to. So okay, let's take a 5 minute.
Yes,
5 minute recess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So we'll just break for 5 minutes. If anybody else wants to take a comfort break, yeah. Okay, everyone, I think we're back to quorum. So please, if anybody wishes a break in the future, please let me know and I will bring it to a halt. But because there may be new information. So, but I'll go back to the question. Would any councillors like to ask any questions for further clarification from Louise on the presentation? Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you. I was just interested, whether on file there's a location assessment, which is a regulatory requirement and part of the Ofsted registration process set out in paragraph 15.1 of the Guide to Children's Home Regulations. This is a requirement in the Chief Planning Officer's letter to planning authorities after the ministerial statement.
Sorry, if I misunderstood, requesting what?
It is important that prospective applicants talk to the local planning authorities about whether their service is needed in that locality using the location assessment, a regulatory requirement and part of the Ofsted registration process set out in paragraph 15.1 of the Guide to the Children's Homes Regulations to demonstrate this. That particular paragraph itself is more about risk assessment of the suitability of the premises, but it does link to other guidance. There's a hyperlink and it says see other guidance within 15.1. So all I'm saying is it's there. And so I'm asking if there's one on file.
Just before I pass it on, I'm just wondering, does that have relevance in the fact that the building already has an approval for a children's home? But I'll pass that on.
It's talking mainly in respect of the new build.
Yeah, which is just an increase in the numbers, isn't it? Yeah. But I'll wait for an answer. Councillor Mason, while we're waiting.
Yeah. Are there any speakers for the applicant tonight?
Yes.
There are speakers for applicant. Thank you. Okay, so because some of the questions I have would be maybe difficult for the officers to answer. So.
Okay.
But
the applicant isn't here, so yeah.
Councillor Pritchett, can I just seek clarification on the date that you stated for the document, please?
They printed one off. Shall I bring it round to see?
Please.
It's not got.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm going to try and answer this, bearing in mind that we had quite a lengthy discussion this morning with quite a senior person in the County Council Social Services. So whilst this is the written ministerial statement, just so that everybody knows exactly what I'm looking at here. So the written ministerial statement.
The written ministerial statement.
This document that you've given me, Councillor Pritchett, is the written ministerial statement. What I was going to refer to is the paragraph within.
It's taken from the Chief Planning Officer's new letters.
Yeah, so it's a part of the written ministerial statement. So, but what it's basically saying is, this particular paragraph says it's important that prospective applicants talk to local planning authorities about whether their service is needed in that locality using the location assessment. And then it refers to paragraph 15.1 of a 2015 document. that paragraph 15.1 says that when establishing the home, the registered person must ensure that it is suitably located so that children are effectively safeguarded and can access services to meet needs identified in their relevant plans, and refers to some regulations. The registered person should review the appropriateness and suitability of the location and premises of the home at least once a year. The review should include the identification of any risks and opportunities presented by the home's location and strategies for managing these. Providers should refer to the non-statutory advice about the location assessment process, and then there's a link to some regulation amendments from 2014. So local planning authorities do not have assessments of need for children's homes. We rely on the county council, where we have a two-tier authority system, as we do have here, in terms of the assessment of that need. And the county council have been quite clear that there is both a national need and a local need at a county level. What they don't do is then go into the granular detail as to what the need is on a per district basis. And they specifically tell us that the need on that, if you were to break it down to that kind of level of granularity on a district basis across somewhere like Leicestershire, they would find that homes would cluster in very few districts, limiting the suitable options for children across the entire county. Leicestershire is a relatively small county geographically, so limiting provision to those district boundaries reduces the flexibility and can quite easily prevent the right placement being found for a child. So they gave us quite a lot of information about how they assess that need in terms of the different types of needs that children have across all of the different sectors of care, that there are shortages in fostering that cannot meet the demand, and specifically the complexity of the children's needs has increased significantly in the last 5 years. Different homes and different providers provide different levels of childcare for those different levels of needs. So you wouldn't necessarily find that a child would be suitable to go into the home that would necessarily be nearest to it, or that it would that they would actually fit there, bearing in mind the other children that might already be housed there. Takes them generally around about 3 to 4 weeks to find a suitable placement for a child in need. I'll probably leave it there if that's okay.
Questions we just needed a yes or no. Whether what's in it is a separate matter. You know, that was all. I think you've answered a possibly another question there. I just want to know whether there was one on file or not.
We're saying we don't actually require one. Okay. Can I speak, Councillor Mason?
Yeah, thank you. These questions may be slightly moribund because I want to ask but I will ask anyway, because they do appear on the portal. Well, they're right on the portal information. How many children? Do you know how many children are housed in the current house? That's
It's
maybe a leading.
I believe is the agreement.
That may be a leading question. It's 3. Yeah, I think it's 3. That falls out of the applicant's documentation, and it's proposed for 4. That house will house 4 because that's what the certificate of lawfulness tells us. Is that correct? Okay, that's fine. And does everybody know where the children are schooled? No. Okay. Thank you very much. That'll do me for the time being. Thank you.
Yes, just on the question of children, I mean, the site isn't near the centre of Melton. It's right out on the outskirts. It's out in the country to some extent. But how would they get from there to somewhere else? Isn't it a bit isolated, therefore?
Yes, so similar principles would be in place as per a child not in care. So there is an established use there at present. There is facilities available for any child to make arrangements to go to school or to use public transport, etc. One of the things that we have discussed at length is the potential for actually not being close to town centres, not being in built up, loud, noisy, enticing environments may not be suitable for all children. So actually a quieter, not isolated, but more rural location may be more suitable for a different need of a different level of care.
Any other questions for clarification? Councillor Glancy.
Yes, it's more to do with the report. I'm a bit mystified because on page 53, we've got the Melton local plan and you list policies. Well, there's policies there that I don't recognise that's in the Melton local plan. CF2, S1 and H8. Unless there's a new plan that I don't know anything about, I just think it's a bit weird. So I think we've probably got the wrong numbers there. That's a bit misleading. If someone was looking at the local plan policies, they're incorrect. I think we've got the confused with the Thorpe Arnold and neighbourhood plan policies.
Yes, my apologies, Councillor Glancy. Yes, some of those are looking like they're confused between the two. So CF2 is a Waltham and Thorpe Arnold neighbourhood plan policy.
Come back on that. Are we looking at sort of our local plan policies, C8, which will become C7 in the revised local plan, and SS1 and SS3, respective about SS3 for Windfall and SS1 for limits of development? Are those irrelevant policies?
Policy SS3 is not applicable because it's not residential development. It's not a new dwelling house. Right. Sorry, what was the other policy?
SS1, which is limits of development, that should be the same, shouldn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and also policy C8, which is community facilities. I don't really think we've got a policy for that within the local plan specifically, but there is in the new reviewed plan.
Yeah, so we can't give any weight currently to the emerging local plan update.
No, we can't. So yeah. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Pritchett, and then.
Thank you much, Chair. The statement that you said about a national shortage, Sarah, that's rather simplistic because we've got the latest update from September 2025 from the County Council on their placement market position, where they're looking at the types of care, where it is needed, and also more support in early intervention at home. And they're actually saying from 15 to 18-year-olds, there's a shortage of six placements. Now, what I can say, it's not defined, Chair. I think you'd be fair, and I'll just read you something from that statement, if I may. We are continuing to gather information that will help us better understand our local market and to help make more informed decisions about the market shaping and procurement for the future. We will therefore be looking at data telling us what provisions there are within Leicestershire and surrounding areas, how many of these Leicestershire is currently working with, and how we can work with those we currently don't work with, and work with our neighbouring local authorities to understand how they use supplies and provisions. And it details all what they're doing with the early intervention. So the actual need is not clearly defined. And since the ministerial letter came out, it would seem that they've not been working with the...
So what is the question?
Well, it's too simplistic to say there's a national shortage. You can't say that.
So is that for the debate, or is that for a question to the officers for clarification?
Querying that point, that it's a bit of a, I think it's a bit of a short oversimplification. That was all.
Councillor Mason, did you want to? No, you're fine. Councillor Arnott, you're next.
Thank you. I just want 2 points of clarification. We've got an existing building where there's a licence. So irrespective of what we decide tonight, that will continue. And does that licence allow for more children than there are there now, or is there a finite limit? That's the one question. The second question I have is, with respect to the new build, is that outside the line of permitted development as things stand at the moment? And if so, are we right to say that we can overturn that if we've got good grounds to do that? In other words, if there's no actual harm, is that what the argument is? Just need those clarifications, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. So there is an existing use for Avahan as a children's care home that has a certificate of lawful use granted and approved. So that will continue, can continue regardless of the outcome of this application this evening. For 6 proposed. So we've got 6 residents living in a single household, 4 children, 2 carers. Yeah. And then the limit to development as agreed within the neighbourhood plan, the Avahan sits inside the limit to development and the proposed annex sits outside of the limits to development. So it's that assessment of where the harm comes from. And within the presentation earlier, it was just because it conflicts with policy doesn't automatically mean it should be refused. It's identifying the harm that's caused with that conflict in policy.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarification? Sorry, Councillor.
You may turn around and say this has got nothing to do with the actual development itself, because that's what we're judging. But when we classify children's homes, do we classify children's home? Is there an age?
I believe it's up to 17, but as a local planning authority, we don't define that.
That's all the questions. So we'll move on to the speakers, and I'd like to call upon Councillor Stephen Horn from Waltham and Thorpe Arnold Parish Council. Thank you very much. If you'd like to come forward to the desk. As with the other speakers, you'll have 3 minutes from when you start speaking. We'll give you a 30.
Because we have 2 speakers tonight who are both speaking against, then we have 3 minutes, which has to be split.
Well, no, one's a parish council and the other one is an object.
Sorry, right. Okay, my apologies.
Yeah, sorry, Karen. So you'll have 3 minutes to make your presentation. Give you 30 seconds warning from the end. And if you could start to close at that point, that would be fantastic. So please, when you're ready, please carry on.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. The Parish Council wish to object to this application on clear and well-established planning grounds. The proposal is outside the settlement boundary, contrary to the local plan, contrary to the neighbourhood plan, and unsustainable in planning terms. The neighbourhood plan, which carries full statutory weight, also identifies this land as unsuitable for development. Local residents spent years shaping that plan and it was democratically endorsed. It is also outside the red line of the borough plan. The neighbourhood plan clearly states that new development should be within the settlement boundary, should respect the character of the village and should be located where services, infrastructure and transport can support it. This proposal fails on all 3 counts. Because the site boundary, the site is outside the boundary, it is not a sustainable location for growth. It increases reliance on private cars, which would have considerable increase in traffic onto a Class 1 road where the access has restricted visibility in both directions and lag lane opposite. Policy H2 of the neighbourhood plan is absolutely clear. New dwellings should be 3 bedrooms or fewer. This proposal exceeds that limit. The proposal was created to ensure that new housing meets the needs of the local community, particularly smaller, more affordable homes that support local demographics by proposing a larger dwelling than the maximum allowed. The application directly contradicts the community's democratically endorsed housing strategy. This is not a minor technicality. It's a fundamental breach of core policy. It's also important to highlight the planning history of this site. There have been 2 previous applications for this property seeking a change in use to a care home. The first was refused by this authority and the second withdrawn following dialogue with the authority. In the first case, the council concluded the proposals would be likely to increase dangers for highway users to the detriment of safety, contrary to policy OS1 of the Melton Local Plan. That reasoning remains directly relevant today. The access arrangements, location and relationship of the highway has not fundamentally changed. The same risks identified previously still apply. The principle established by those refusals that development here would be detrimental to highway safety should carry significant weight. The local plan requires development to be in the locations that are well connected
30 seconds.
and supported by infrastructure. This site does not meet that test. Members, this is not a fine and balanced case. The policies are clear, the boundaries are clear, and the conflict with adopted planning documents undeniable. For those reasons, we respectfully urge you to uphold policy, protect the integrity of your planning framework, and refuse this application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your time. If you'd like to just stay there for a moment in case there's any questions for clarification from any of the members of the committee. No, looking like you're getting a clean run on that one. Thank you very much for your time. I'd therefore like to call David Lovegrove, an objector talking against the application. David, welcome to the meeting. Thank you. I'm sure you've been listening to all the instructions beforehand, so yeah, I won't repeat them again. But from the moment you start speaking, you'll have 3 minutes with a 30-second warning. It's all right. No, please take your time. No worries. No worries. We've all missed the curling final anyway, so. Okay. Whenever you're ready, just press the face in the middle so the red light comes on. You go and start speaking when you're ready.
Good evening, Chair, councillors and officers. My name is David Lovegrove. I'm a lifelong resident of Thorpe Arnold. Throughout that time, careful and considered planning has protected our rural identity while still allowing sensible and sustainable growth. I served on Waltham and Thorpe Arnold Parish Council for 22 years and was closely involved in developing the village development plan. I know firsthand the thought, consultation and hard work that went into defining our village boundaries and shaping our community's future. It would be deeply disappointing to see those carefully constructed policies set aside. I'm therefore speaking tonight to object to the proposal for a new dwelling on land adjacent to Averhan and the A607. The site lies outside the defined village envelope. It directly conflicts with policies which allow only limited infill within that boundary. Approving this application would extend built development land into open countryside and erode the clear edge of the village. Once that boundary is breached, it becomes increasingly difficult to resist further encroachment. Thorpe Arnold is a welcoming and inclusive village. However, planning decisions must be based on adopted policy and long-term sustainability. There are also serious highway safety concerns. I think it's under policy IN2. The site fronts a busy stretch of the A607 where visibility is poor, particularly at the T-junction when entering or exiting the A607. Recent requests by the Parish Council to reduce the speed limit to 30 miles an hour have been refused by Leicestershire Highways, so these risks remain very real. Furthermore, a standalone dwelling in this location would appear isolated and intrusive, harming the open countryside character that policies D1 and EN2 are designed to protect. In summary, this proposal lies outside the village boundary, raises significant highway concerns, And as someone who has lived here all my life and helped shape
30
our
seconds.
local development framework, I believe it is vital that we safeguard both safety and heritage. Once our countryside is lost, it cannot be restored. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the committee to refuse this application unless and until any future proposal aligns with the defined development boundary and the principles of sustainability, community-led growth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Before I let you go, I'll just ask if any councillors want to ask questions. Councillor Pritchett.
Can you help me, please, Mr. Lovegrove? There's a new bungalow on the bend. Where does that stand in relation to the boundary line?
I believe it's about half and half. Half in the boundary, half outside the boundary, the development line.
Thank you.
Sorry, do you want to use the microphone? Yeah.
Just to, that was a question that I posed to the, and it does cut the boundary, so it does sit, half the site does sit within the boundary itself, so it is on the edge, and conterminous too.
Councillor Allnut.
Can I just ask, when was the last time that County Councillor Brian Lovegrove tried to get a 30-mile-per-hour speed limit along there? Was that recent, or is that a long time since?
The road has been closed. The road has been had a 30-mile-an-hour limit on it since they started the ring road. With that, we've noticed a reduced speed through the village. Brian then, Councillor Lovegrove then tried to push that forward to get that instated as a permanent 30-mile-an-hour limit. That's when it was refused.
Any other questions for clarification? No? Then thank you very much for your time. Thank you. And I'll open the application for debate. Would anybody like to start the debate? Councillor Allnut.
On that last point about a bungalow being straddling the line, I'd like to know, is that a recent bungalow, and does it in any way set a precedent? I mean, having breached the line, does that mean we would be, I'm glad someone's answering me. Well, what I want to know is if it went to, if we refused it and it went to appeal, would the inspector say, well, you've already allowed that one, why don't you allow this one?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it is a similar scenario to what's in front of you. So De Bosco House, as it's known locally, sits within the limits to development, as does Avahan, which is the application site here. That host dwelling sits within the limits to development. The new build for De Bosco on the other side of the road is outside of the limits to development. And similarly, the annex, and can I just clarify, it's an annex, it's not a new dwelling. The annex proposed here is outside of the limits to development. So it's a very similar scenario. The similarities are the same in this instance. It's residential curtilage. So whilst the limits to development fall outside, fall foul, it's within the curtilage of the existing dwelling. So it's a very similar scenario to the bungalow that was built on the other side of the road.
Chair, I do understand the curtilage issue, and we've had other applications across the borough where the curtilage of the ownership of the property is clear, but unfortunately some of their land that they own falls outside the development. We've had that with farmland, haven't we? Can I just understand the phrase annex? Now, in my old-fashioned sense, an annex is normally something that's built onto an existing building, but you're saying there's a separation. Does that mean that it's not self-contained?
So an annex is reliant upon a host dwelling. So in this instance, it's the change of use entirely of Avahan, the house, and then the annex of being built to create a further support for children. So the two would be used together, managed by the same company in the same ownership.
The word annex in this sense is a conceptual thing. It's not a physical thing. Right, because that's confusing to me. Because being an old geezer, I think an annex is a physical thing. But so he could have annexures, he could have some more in theory, and it would just go on and on and on. Right, okay, that's answered my question. Thank you.
I think Councillor Mason was first, and then Councillor Pritchett, I think. Councillor Mason.
Yeah, just it's my understanding that the edge of a development boundary is not defined in the NPPF. It is in the gift of the planners or the authority to define where that sits with any particular application. But for this application, it's clear to me that the annex sits outside the development boundary. On the bungalow we're talking about, it sits within the development boundary, but the building doesn't, but half the site does. So essentially the site, the development cuts the boundary, and there are other issues that can be brought to bear. Is the case of rounding off. I'm sure our planners will know the concept of rounding off. When I looked at that bungalow, it seemed to me that was a rounding off exercise we got on that bend. So I do think that it's slightly different to the case of the annex. So that's my take on that. So it is, I think, different.
Councillor Pritchett.
In support of that, I don't think you can compare the two. The bungalow as well is in the front line on the building line. You've got the line of buildings down this lane and the big gardens and paddocks behind, and the annex is behind. It is significantly behind. It's not necessarily in line. So I think there's two separate. It would be. I don't think it would be correct to align them as the same issues.
And I mean, the only part I would add into that debate really would be that it's more about what that annex becomes, and then ensuring that it doesn't become something else. You know, taking into the point the definition of annex, that it is dependent upon the main building, and those two are never separated, and it doesn't suddenly become a 3-bedroom bungalow, which is a separate entity as such. So, but whatever, as long as there is conditioning that allows it to remain as we give planning permission for and doesn't change that, then that would, to me, irrespective of what the distance is between the two annexes. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Pritchett.
A point. There's a condition that says you can't change the class of use without written permission. So is that sufficient to protect from change of use?
I think that's down to our Councillor Atherton, I think, was you saying you'd like to talk, and then Councillor Gunsey. Yeah.
The thing that worries me most about this, two things. It seems strange to me that a children's care organisation wants to take away a tennis court, which would be a great asset to the children's home, and convert it into a building. That seems kind of misguided, but is not relevant to us as a planning committee. It just seems really, really strange. The real concern I've got is one of safety, and it ties into a point made by the last speaker. This road is normally a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. It's currently been reduced during the construction of MMDR to 30 miles an hour. If you drive out from Melton Mowbray towards Grantham, you go up the hill and round the corner. If there are people crossing at that point, at the junction of Lag Lane, even at 30 miles an hour, you barely have time to see them and to react. Change of use of the existing building is one thing, because that's no different to having a large family move into there and there's not much you can do. Having a second building on site with an increased number of children aged up to 17 or 18 who are going to be to want to go into town potentially late at night. It's not very well lit.
to me, Leicester County Council Highways have missed a trick. They've looked at it purely from a vehicle access perspective. I think there's a real safety issue here with pedestrian crossing, not unrelated to the issues we discussed last year in relation to the development further along the road, only a few hundred yards up the road, and access to the footpath. Here, though, for me, it's more critical because there is not a recognised crossing point. If we support this application, and I see no reason to not support it, then I think we should, as a council, get behind the parish's request to the county to have the speed limit permanently reduced. Otherwise, before very long, there will be an accident.
Thank you, Councillor Glancy. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think if we bring this back to sort of pure planning, I think that's what we need to concentrate on, because this particular building, I don't understand why it isn't closer to the host building. Why is it actually in the area of separation between Melton Mowbray and Thorpe Arnold when they've got an acre of ground? So it could quite easily be brought into the normal development of Thorpe Arnold within their garden curtilage. There is no need to have it right out in the area of separation in my mind, and I think that goes blatantly against our policy within the local plan, and that is relevant, and that's policy EN4. And I notice in our local plan, which I've got in front of me again with all my stickers on it, when we're talking about development within Thorpe Arnold, it clearly states on page 60 to avoid development in the west, because that would have the most adverse impact on the character of Thorpe Arnold by increasing the potential for coalescence and reducing the character of the village. Now, this sits in that area, so I have to say I cannot vote for this. I have no objection to the children's home. I think we need them, but to have a building which we're quite happy to propose and let it go through in an area of separation. We worked really, really hard to get this local plan, and we review during our review, we have not altered policy EN4. We've held that in high esteem, and here we are thinking about, well, let's ignore it. And I don't think we should be ignoring it. I think it's extremely important to observe that plan. That's why we've worked really hard to get our local plan on board, why we agreed it and why we're doing the review.
Thank you. Just before I come to you, Councillor Mason, can I just clarify in my own mind that we don't have the power, I suppose, for want of a better word, to say that you need to move the site. It would be a refusal and they would need to come back with a new application. Yeah. So I just wanted to clarify. So Councillor Mason.
Thank you, Chair. Then just turn to what I think is the paramount issue here, and that's need. The question of need of this facility. Throughout the officer's report, and indeed the applicant's report, there's a golden thread, and I'll read directly from the officer report at 9.4. The proposal delivers significant social benefits by meeting an identified local need for specialist children's care provision, as evidenced in Melton Borough Council's Planning Guide for Children's Homes. We all know that one. And the Leicestershire County Council Children's Social Care Placement Market Position and Sufficiency Statement. That's what it says. And it runs through the whole of the planning officer's report. This morning we get something else that contradicts that, and I will turn to that. And the reason I asked the question that is there a need in the first place, was simple questions require the most complicated answers. If there's 3 children in a home with 4 places, why has that place not been filled if it's that urgent a need? That's the question I asked myself, and that's what I've tended to look at in here. And these documents go on, and within that, you have to identify what is the local need. And when you turn up the plan, the sufficiency plan, as identified by the local council. And if I then look at the report, and there's a copy of the report, front page of the Children's and Families Scrutiny Committee, November 2024, it gives an example of what they consider to be local, that I think. And what it says is, and I'll read what it is designed to do. The Children's Act 1989 requires all local authorities to take steps that are reasonably practical to secure sufficient accommodation for children and young people under their care, who cannot live at home and whose circumstances indicate that would be for the best interest to be accommodated within the local authority area. For example, in order to stay at the same school or near to the family where contact can be easily placed. This is generally referred to as the sufficiency duty, and that is what the Leicestershire County Council document is refreshed every 6 months to provide. And in the last document, excuse me from that is a direct lift from the document. And apparently, I'm not going to bore you with the numbers, because I know you all get slightly vexed when I start talking about numbers, but in Leicestershire at that time, there's 726 children in care in Leicestershire, and that equates to, for every 10,000 population of 0 to 17, that's 50.8 children. It goes on to say then that when you look down all the statistics down there, that only 10%, I take what you say with regards to foster care, etc., but only 10% of those are placed in a residential home or school. Don't take a lot of working out, does it? That's 73 across the county. What I don't see, and I don't see in these documents that's produced today by Sarah, and I absolutely accept the constraints of capacity that's placed upon our planners to be able to do this work, and I've got no problems with it. But I don't see in here any metrics, any form of analysis of what that means. I don't see a plot of the children's home across the county. I don't see a plot of who's in where and what. We don't need to know the detail. We just need to know where these homes are, so that we can assess whether or not the need is a true need or not. So I think I would suggest for myself that the need has not been proven to me, because what has happened, I firmly believe that all of a sudden the fresh information that we received today turns it into a national need. It's not local need. So where are we? This thing's been turned on its head. This planning report has been turned on its head by some other information that's come from Leicestershire today, and I don't know where we stand with it. I've got grave reservations about all this, because when I look at the reports that are in the that are supposed to identify the need and sufficient need, they're telling me there is no need, and I shall leave it at that for the time being. But I cannot support this application on that principle. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's probably worthwhile if I just read from the note that I circulated this morning following our meeting with a senior official at the County Council Social Care team. So in terms of identifying a local need for children's homes, it does not work in the same way as, for example, forecasting housing numbers at a district level like we do for the local plan, where we have demographic details, we understand those housing needs, and we know what we have to allocate in terms of the local plan. Children's care, social care, operates across a much wider area because the needs of individual children are complex, rapidly changing, and cannot be matched to small geographical boundaries. Our meeting this morning confirmed firstly that the overall need for residential care is rising. Across Leicestershire, the number of children in residential settings has increased year on year, and this is driven by two key factors. There are not enough foster carers to meet demand, and the complexity of children's needs has increased significantly in the last 5 years. For some children, their needs simply cannot be met in a foster placement, meaning residential homes are essential. Secondly, need cannot be broken down to a district level. The County Council's market position statement is produced at a County Council level for that reason. A child in care may need to move within or beyond Leicestershire for their safety, education and specialist provision. There's no direct formula such as X children in Melton require X residential beds in Melton. If the county were to plan at that level of granularity, homes would cluster in only a few districts, limiting the suitable options for children elsewhere. Leicestershire is a relatively small county geographically, so limiting provision to district boundaries reduces the flexibility and can prevent the right placement for being found for the right child. Third, being local is about the child's whole life and not just their administrative address. A child from Nottinghamshire or Lincolnshire may be placed in Melton if it keeps them closer to their family, school or GP. Equally, London boroughs are now placing their children in Leicestershire because of travel routes such as the M1, which allow their social care staff to visit the children more quickly than by travelling across London, and because of the lower housing costs. The overriding aim is always to keep children as close as possible to their networks, but the current lack of provision means that this is often very challenging. Fourth, the residential market is complex and unpredictable. Most children's homes are run by private providers, and a home still needs to firstly register successfully with Ofsted, which can be delayed by the availability of specialist staff and can only be done once planning permission is granted. Secondly, be accepted onto Leicestershire's procurement framework, which involves financial checks, a quality assessment and a reviewing of their statement of purpose, which details essentially the types of children that they would be able to care for. And third, have the right type of vacancy at the right time. Even then, placements must be matched carefully so that children living together are compatible. Vacancies often remain unused because the needs don't match, or staffing levels can only support one child safely, even if the home technically has several beds. This is sometimes called bed blocking, and it significantly reduces apparent capacity. Fifth, the increase in complex needs adds further constraints. Children coming into care now often present with high levels of trauma and/or mental health needs. Providers require specialist stable teams to support them safely, and this limits how many children can be placed at any one time. The County Council's market position statement clearly sets out that there is therefore a local need, and the county's evidence shows rising demand for residential care, ongoing sufficiency challenges, and the need for more local provision so that children can remain connected to their families, schools and communities. It's updated every 6 months to reflect the changing data, and they're working on the March update currently. It also makes clear that residential care is only one part of the system. The County Council is also investing in alternatives to and early help to prevent children needing to enter care in the first place. Okay.
Yeah, please, Councillor Mason, then I'll go to Councillor Elnott and then Councillor, yeah.
Sorry, two things. That doesn't correlate with the what's been said at scrutiny. The definition of local or the definition given to the scrutiny committee at Leicestershire County Council doesn't correlate with that, and also that doesn't the information you put there doesn't equate to the Children and Family Services market position that is currently published.
Councillor Elnott.
Thank you, Chair. I've come to a conclusion that there is sufficient purely planning grounds to refuse this application. That's building outside the line and the question of the highways and safety. I will touch on the needs issue because I concur with my good friend Councillor Mason that there is a contradiction in the evidence from the county. Although, of course, we must remember that scrutiny is not always the same as our other parts of the authority. But I think there is sufficient doubt to say that we need this resolved for the future. Should this application come back in another form, I think that'd be vital. And I've raised I read what we've heard earlier today, and I posed that question about how actually we view that. I think it is quite a good point that the building could be moved further in. I suspect, to answer my friend's point about the tennis court, that's why they're using the tennis court. That's why they're building it there, because the tennis court is disused and they thought, oh, this is a good place to put it. So maybe to keep it inside the line. But that highway junction is crucial, and I would like to see outside of this application indeed support our good friend Councillor Brian Lovegrove and the parish in this campaign, if you like, to get that sorted, because that is crucial. So I think on those two grounds, I would reject it. Reserve judgment on the needs issue, as it were, and I so move.
Thank you. I'll just go to Councillor Higgins, and then Councillor Gunson, and then Councillor Pritchett. Yes, you proposed a refusal, Councillor Allnutt? Yeah. But Councillor Higgins motion you'd like to speak before that.
Well, I am happy to second what Councillor Allnutt was saying. So just ever so quickly, if I'm going to, you were saying on because I was going to talk about where they're building this annex, and I do have a question. Before was an annex for 4 children and 2 staff. If it's self-contained, it's not really an annex as I understood, if it's not really using the main dwelling. So then there is that whole query, and it just seems as if it is a independent building. And I'm just, in my ward, a very good person I know in my ward went on something like this, and I said, I just don't think I could support that, even as the ward councillor. And so that's where I'm coming at in a planning term. Doesn't matter that I know them or whatever the merits are, is if we've got policies which is no, it's no, unless other material things. Now, then we say the area of separation. Now, I know what we worked on because I know what Councillor Glance is doing on the local plan working group, but I led on it going through the whole review in 2017. An area of separation was so important. Burton Lazars is another one, and we've got, so there is a whole reason why we're saying not go in there, and it's not just like a village envelope as such where we have them all over. Area of separation to give the whole identity of this part is Melton, the town, conurbation, and this part is a rural village. Now Thorpe Arnold and Burton Lazars nearly are very much touching Melton, but we need to make sure that they're separate. Otherwise, in 20 years' time, the next local plan probably just goes straight through those villages. So that's why I think to say no now on there. It could be built closer. That's not for me to decide, but I do agree with Councillor Allnutt there. The question I have, and I will just touch on the numbers, and with the greatest respect to what the County Hall representative wrote, it was a fabulous letter that we've had, and I understand that. There still was no detail in numbers, and I understand when they're saying, well, there can't be a formula and all the other stuff, but proven need is proven need, so you have to prove it. Otherwise, what's the point of saying proven? Because policy SS3, which everybody in this room knows, it drives me crackers, and we've heard it from the parish council here. We can't get young people in our villages because no proven need, and they try and prove it, but it's then not just enough. Well, I don't think the County Hall here has just enough proven to me there is a need. I'm sure there is, but I'm challenging it back to them before I make a decision on that part. You've got to prove it to me if I'm a decision maker. And just finally, and while this is just a side issue, is, and we've got different departments at County Hall, they've totally messed up the education for this area. They can't even plan for that. So I'll just leave that there.
Councillor Glancy and then Councillor Pritchett.
Thank you. I think we'll get back to the proposal that's on the table, the fact that I'm quite willing to second that proposal to refuse. You have?
Yeah.
Did you?
I did, yeah.
I didn't hear that bit.
I said I was happy to second.
Oh, right, sorry. Do we have reasons? No, I'm not going to, yeah. So do we actually have reasons to refuse?
I think the proposer said he was moving it for area of separation, which is what I heard, but I'll let Councillor.
We can come back to that, but I mean, sorry, do you want to carry on, Councillor Glancy?
No, just the fact that I do have been writing furiously as I've been looking at my good old local plan. Yes, I think the reasons are actually in the report, but we just turn them around the other way, and it's the impact. Yes, the contrary to policy EN4, a local plan, and also ENV5 of the neighbourhood plan. I do have other wording if you need it.
Councillor Pritchett. Sorry, Councillor Atherton. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Councillor Glancy for expressing better than I could the issues regarding the adherence to planning policies and areas of separation and boundaries, supported by Councillor Higgins. The second thing I will address is the need. This has been around for some time. We were originally together because of concern with the Redmar Children's Home. We had a meeting after about monitoring disturbance, and I wrote to the leader on the 28th of November 2024 and copied it to Councillor Ziggy Atherton, the Conservatives Communities Lead. And it said here that we're approving applications before it is known what the borough and county need is, right? And that we should be working with LCC, and that goes across some other things. Now, the position that we've got is that the need isn't proven in the reports. It's a statement without any backup. The position that has come out from the meeting with social services is at odds with the September update of the need, where they're working to arrest the need and go through the different types of clients that they've got, where they've got 6 placements needed. And so it's been over the last 18 months or so between the boroughs, the districts and the county. Now, as a minimum, I would have expected something early on headed note paper. When this application come in, it's all about need and the area of separation. And yet we're waiting now with no headed note paper with a meeting read out, which is completely unacceptable. So I'm supporting the motion to refuse.
Just before we try and clarify all of the reasons, Councillor Freer.
Thank you, Chair. I think adding a bit of common sense to the need issue in education, working with children as I do, there is no ability to know at what point that somebody needs emergency care. There is no ability to test the need for families that are in crisis where children need to be removed. So I just wanted to add that like common sense statement to, you know, how can the local authority express how many children need a place, and that is what I'm disappointed at, is there's no representation from the private limited company that build these properties, and also that I can't find anywhere on Ofsted's website anything to do with the company. That being said, that's not a planning issue. That's merely, I want to know the company that are putting these accommodation units around, and are they a good a good organisation. In terms of planning and bringing it back to the planning, absolutely totally on board with Councillor Olnett and Councillor Glancy about the planning side of it, but I kind of needed to, as someone in education, needed to kind of add a bit of educational clarity around emergency places. You cannot measure, put a number or data on emergency places for children, and it's not possible to put them in the areas where they live. It's not possible to locate them next to the school because you don't know what their situation is. So the statement that was read out was perfectly adequate in terms of not being able to assess the need of how many placements, what types of children, what are the ages of children, where are they coming from. It's just impossible. But equally, on a planning grounds, I'm absolutely supporting the refusal with my two fellow councillors. But I just wanted it. I can't be a person in education working with children as I do on a daily basis and not put that statement forward on terms of on the need basis. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to come to Clive, but just one final point, Councillor Mason.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Threat. I do agree with it, every word you said. However, in the report, it says an identified local need. Where's the identification? There is none. You say you can't identify it, but somebody's identified it somewhere because they're telling us it's identified. Then I can't see where that is. And if I can't see where it is, I can't give any credence to this application.
I'd just like to pass on to Clive. Clive?
I just want to make a couple of observations before members move on and decide whether to back that recommendation, motion. Need per se is not a planning consideration. So whilst there is reference in the report to planning need, the weight that's given to that, sorry, I said planning need, only need for children's home, the weight to be given to that has to be taken in context. Members have made a number of observations about the fact that they don't believe that that is made out, and they believe there is ambiguities between the information in the report and other material provided both on the County Council's website and by the officers today. If members are saying that that's a material consideration and they are faced with ambiguity, then to dismiss it out of hand, make the decision based on other criteria and not clarify that point is risking making a decision without taking account of all material considerations. So on that basis, to decide that you will question material that's before you, then discard it without clarifying it, when it's absolutely clear that there is a disparity between the information that's been given in 3 different sources. Some of it or all of it is wrong. And at the moment, you're effectively saying we're not going to bother clarifying that. We will just make a decision based on other matters, give them the weight we consider appropriate, and then we will effectively deal with it on that basis. If there is such a concern about A, whether there is a requirement for need to be established, and B, whether that need has been established, if there is a requirement for that need to be established, the more appropriate thing to do, which I know is unpopular, would be to defer the application and come back to look at those issues when officers have been able to look at them further.
I'm not sure which one put the hand up, but I'll go with the proposer first. Councillor Allnutt.
Chair, we must always take legal advice. And if the law officer, our senior law officer, is saying that a particular route would be hazardous for this authority, then I would be happy to take his advice and go with deferral so that we can defer to get clarity into the statements about need and be clearer about what it means and the weight of it. Now, let's say we came back and we had received that clarity, we would then be weighing the clarity of the need with those other 2 planning issues. I might still come back with the same answer and say those 2 other things outweigh the need in this particular case. But if I may say so, I did refer to earlier my letters I've written to ministries, and it was precisely because of this, that planning committees are not very good, given the rules as they're written now, at determining whether children's homes should get approval or not. I'm very grateful that we haven't heard tonight objections to children's homes per se. And I noticed that in the objections, there was a lot of talk about the church. Well, as a Christian myself, I say, suffer little children to come unto me. And we should welcome these children into our communities and help them. But on those, for me, the citing of that annex and the highway objections really are the telling points. But if the law officer is advising us strongly that we might be remiss if we didn't defer it and call for more data on the needs bit. I'm happy to withdraw my motion and go for deferral if that's the strong view. But my seconder will
Well,
express a view.
No, I will second that, because I know your refusal was actually excluding the need, but I'm happy to listen to Clive on that, because if we have probably more robust information about local need and proven local need, and that's what I agree with, because yes, there's no magic formula in numbers. I know that, but there's got to be something if someone's asking us to have it as a consideration of what's behind it. But to me, I still think that the building is in the wrong place. So I'm happy to second the deferment. If anyone wants to go for a refusal, then I'll consider that.
Councillor Atherton.
Thanks, Chair. A question for Clive, really. Assuming we go ahead with the deferment, do we have any authority to request the applicant to come and explain, or to provide a written explanation as to why the building is proposed to go where it is and not closer to the main building?
You know, that we if members are concerned about that issue as well, then obviously seeking further clarification on that is acceptable.
Yeah, and I think if they bring it closer to the building, it gets rid of the separation issue, doesn't it? It's the location of the building within the confines of their estate that kind of breaches policy EN4. If they move it kind of to the right, a bit nearer to the main house, then maybe that breach of policy goes away.
Councillor Pritchett.
2 points. First one, if you're saying need is not significant, can we not refuse it because of the location? Is one question, then I've got another one.
Need per se is not a planning consideration. It's just that members seem to consider it to be so in this case. So for clarification on that, we can seek further information.
Okay, point of clarification, but Councillor Glancy was
only as the seconder. It's I'm not holding any weight on the need. It's where it is. So I'm holding no weight on the need at all. It's where the building is.
Yeah, this is. I was actually going to. Sorry, I'll come to you, Councillor Glancy, but that's why I was actually going to raise the fact that going for a deferral on the need issue, if we come back from the referral, would the decision we'd be making be any different? No. Yeah. Because the conditions that the reasons that we're looking at were the positioning and the curtilage, etc. But Councillor Glancy.
I think you've taken those words out of my mouth, but not to worry. Yes, I think the initial proposal for refusal was about the location and the highway, and then it was seconded on location and highway, and subsequently we've had conversations about the need. But I did say when I first spoke, put the need aside and the children's home aside. It's about planning, and that's what we're here for, and it is still within the area of separation. So I think personally, I think that the need and also the children's home, it is a consideration, but it isn't the reasons why we're proposing refusal.
So can I put it back to the proposer who actually withdrew?
I'm a bit flummoxed because it says in the document quite clearly, quoting the particular case some time ago, and a ministerial statement, a written ministerial statement, that planning should not be a barrier to children's homes. Should not be a barrier. So when I proposed refusal, I was focusing on the purely planning issues, which are not providing a barrier to a home. They're just providing a barrier to any building. I mean, if it was Colonel Arbuthnot living at at the house, and he'd got a brother who'd got a broken, lost his legs in Afghanistan, and he wanted a home for him in the annex. I expect a lot of people say, "Oh, jolly good," but it has to be within the blue line or whatever it is, the red line. So, I mean, if colleagues would prefer to go back to outright refusal, I'm happy with that, because the applicant will come back again anyway.
Councillor Pritchett.
I think what we're saying is that the exception to the rule has not been proved with this. And the second point about safety that's concerning members, if they go through the risk assessment as required by the governing regulations and guidance, and if they get on the provider framework of the county council or an off-framework provider, there will have to be a risk assessment before, I would expect, before that particular provider puts the children there. I mean, I could ask the question of the current children place.
But can we come back, because we were talking about just purely the planning issues? Yeah, that's a different issue, which, as the leader is in the room and he's already written many letters, and I'm sure he can write many more. But so I'll go back to the original seconder.
If the legal officer is okay with how we were originally proceeding, if there is any concern, then let us know now. But that I was focusing just on those two, not the need. I did comment on the need, but that wasn't the reason. I was, as Councillor Walnut said, he expressly excluded it from the motion.
Yes, sorry. I mean, Clive had been asking to come in for that the 10 minutes before then, so the timing could have been different. Sorry. So yeah. So yeah. So we have a proposer. Okay. Yes. So we'll just clarify what the conditions, or the reasons rather, not conditions.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So listening to the debate, I've drafted a couple of reasons for refusal here. If I read these out, if you can just listen really carefully, because I've been trying to tease out from what I've heard what I'm identifying as the harm is, but that obviously needs to come from yourselves as well. So listen, shout up and tell me if I need to be rewording this.
Councillor Clancy is noting this down because she's better at the numbers than me.
And I'll try and read it nice and slowly. So the first one is on the area of separation. The site lies within the designated area of separation between Melton Mowbray and Thorpe Arnold, which serves to maintain the individual identity, character and setting of those settlements and prevent coalescence. Policy EN4 of the Melton Local Plan and Policy ENV5 of the Waltham and Thorpe Arnold Neighbourhood Plan strictly limits development within areas of separation to that which preserves their open and undeveloped character. The introduction of a residential children's home, together with its associated activity, would erode the openness and rural character of the area of separation and would undermine its function in maintaining physical and visual separation between settlements. The proposal therefore conflicts with Policy EN4 of the Melton Local Plan, Policy ENV5 of the Neighbourhood Plan, and with paragraph 162 of the NPPF, which seeks to protect countryside areas that play an important role in maintaining settlement identity.
Well, I'm happy to reinstate my motion that because of the harm, the balance of harm is great for the reasons outlined below. That list. Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah, and I would say I'm happy with it because I'm acutely aware of the proximity of the town Thorpe Arnold. It wouldn't probably arise as much if it was in a village on its own, but that area of separation is absolutely key because of the encroachment of the town on those neighbouring villages.
So are we content with that as a reason for refusal? Okay, so the second one, again, from listening to the debate, whilst you were talking about highways and safety, there's a obviously relation to an unsustainable location that I was hearing coming through as well. So What I've said here is the proposed development represents an inappropriate form of residential institutional use in an isolated and unsustainable location. Avahan is situated outside of any defined settlement boundary with no reasonable access to everyday services, facilities, public transport or safe walking and cycling routes. As such, the development would be heavily reliant on the private car use for staff, visitors and services, contrary to the principles of sustainable development as set out in the NPPF and policies SS1 and IN2 of the Melton Local Plan, which seek to direct development to sustainable and accessible locations. The proposal therefore fails to constitute sustainable development and does not represent an appropriate location for a children's home where regular access to education, healthcare, community services and social interaction is essential for the welfare of future occupants.
Sorry, can I just question, your microphone's on, Councillor. So, can I just question that one, because it is already a children's home, it's operating as a children's home. So in that form, we can't use, in my view, we can't, can we use that? Because it is already, and it will continue as a children's home, whatever the decision we make this evening. And I think the concerns were more about increasing the number of children and the number of traffic.
That's absolutely right, Chair. I don't think we can go with quite all of what was read out, because there is an existing children's home. What we're talking about is adding to the problem, the access and egress problem on the road. So it's a highways thing.
Yeah, so it's an increase in capacity or capacity and traffic, related traffic, etc. Yeah, as Councillor Pritchett mentioned, the risk assessment. Yeah, with our friends at Leicester Highways. Yeah. Any other thoughts with that last? Yeah. Okay. It's just a moment while we work those words together. Of course, Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we've already broached it, to be honest. But it's been coming into my mind that with the annex being where it is now, where they want it, if that business fails, what happens? Would they be counted as two separate houses? Because it wouldn't really be an annex to the other place, would it? To the main, the main house.
Yeah, I think that was the comments about the use of the building and the being very strict restrictions around the use of the building. So if it needed to change, and also that if should the application come back with it more of an annex and connected to the original building, the likelihood of that happening is lessens as well. So, but that's a future debate.
Started mention it just in case. Okay, thanks.
Okay, so how's about this? The proposed development, by introducing an annex to an existing children's home in this location, would result in a material increase in vehicle movements and pedestrian activity associated with staff, visitors, deliveries, supervising professionals, and the day-to-day operation of the facility. The surrounding highway network lacks continuous footways, safe crossing points, street lighting, and formal pedestrian infrastructure. As a result, the intensification of use generated by the proposal would give rise to unacceptable highway and pedestrian safety risks. In the absence of suitable infrastructure to safely accommodate the increased traffic and pedestrian movements, the development would lead to conditions detrimental to highway safety and contrary to the NPPF, paragraphs 115 and 116, and policies IN2 and D1 of the Melton Local Plan, which require development to provide safe and suitable access for all users and to avoid creating severe impacts on the transport network or unacceptable risks to highway safety.
You took the words out of my mouth, actually, but could you just put a comma in after the third line?
we'll move on to the seconder. Can I ask? Yeah,
I'm very happy with that. And Sarah, that was some magic there. So thank you.
Councillor Pritchett and Councillor Glancy, you wanted to make another comment, or Councillor Glancy?
Finally, I'll just make whilst we're in public session here. There was a meeting with social services yesterday. In the paperwork that the applicant submitted, he said it was going to house children from Leicestershire, but there was nothing in the meeting notes from yesterday in support of this particular company, or that yes, we need them to house the children. There seems to be a contradiction there. I'll just make that comment.
Okay, Councillor Glancy.
Just like to say thank you to Sarah for coming up with those words. I'm furiously writing to try and to try and get to the same sort of conclusion, but thank you.
I'm not my thanks as well. So we have a proposal. We have a seconder to refuse the application, and I'd like to move towards the vote on that. So all those in favour of the refusal? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The application is refused for those conditions. I'd like to remind members that we now do have a presentation for members, but I'm sure the members of the public would like to go home. Maybe even the member that's sitting in the audience. Yeah, well, yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm sure we all want to go home, so we want to get the presentation as quickly as possible. So. I didn't declare the meeting closed, but no, sorry, it's not, is it? Because this is on the agenda. Sorry, yeah. Could we start the quicker we get finished? It's only going to take 2 minutes, apparently. Yeah, as long as we can get started. Yeah, please carry on. Yes, yeah. Yes, as soon as the legal representation returns, we'll continue the meeting with the presentation. Yeah. Okay, Louise, I'd like to ask you to continue. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. So I'm pleased to introduce the latest update on the Planning Productivity Plan, which sets out the progress we've made up to the end of January and the next steps in the programme. As members will know, this plan was designed to modernise our planning service, improve consistency and give us the capacity needed to provide a more reliable and resilient service to our customers. The past few months have been challenging for the team, but also incredibly productive, and we are now seeing clear, measurable improvements. I want to draw members' attention to a couple of particularly significant achievements set out within the report. Firstly, officer productivity has almost doubled since the introduction of short interval management. Our long-term average was around 0.4 decisions per officer per day. But since December, this has consistently increased to between 0.7 and 0.8. That is a substantial improvement. Secondly, we are processing significantly more applications than we are receiving. In December, we received 67 applications, but determined 126. In January, we received 48 and determined 83. This increased throughput is crucial in continuing to reduce the backlog within the service. Thirdly, we have successfully embedded new tools and routines that give us much better control over workflow. In particular, WorkView is now fully integrated into our iDocs uniform system, and Melton Borough Council is the first council in the country to achieve that level of integration. This gives us clear visibility of workloads and allows us to plan with far greater accuracy. These achievements have required a huge amount of effort from the team. Officers have taken on new working practices at pace. They've maintained statutory decision making and they've stayed focused on delivery despite high caseloads, vacancies and significant external pressure. Their professionalism and commitment to the project has been exceptional. The report also sets out the next steps. Between now and July, the programme will focus on embedding new routines permanently, redesigning processes, improving validation, refreshing templates, modernising sign-off procedures and introducing clearer service expectations. This work will ensure we do not slip back into old habits and that improvements are sustained. We are also progressing work on stakeholder engagement, performance dashboards, skills development and following recent council approval, moving towards a hosted iDocs uniform system to support a much more stable ICT environment. In summary, Chair and members, the service has made substantial progress and is now moving in a positive and controlled direction. There is still more to do, but the foundations are now firmly in place and we are already seeing a more consistent and more productive service emerging. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Councillor Allnett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, and I agree things are moving in the right direction. I think it would be helpful to know, in amongst the approvals of the backlog, if I can put it that way, where we are in general terms of deciding applications within the maximum statutory limit. Is it the 8 weeks or whatever? That would be helpful to members. If not tonight, then in the future. Now, clearly, there are two other areas of productivity where we need to think about. One is in enforcement. And earlier this evening, we were listening to the discussion about certain applications, and a theme arose there, didn't it? About, well, you've got all these conditions, but how do we know they're going to be enforced? So I think that is an issue for the future. And of course, linked with that is the, if you like, the management of the history of agreements around Section 106, because that's clearly, it's not strictly speaking a productivity thing, but it's something that needs to be managed, and it bears on the department and the officers who work in it, because they can't go away and keep looking at, can't get in a car and drive around the borough to check to see that things are being done. Otherwise, no applications would be resolved. But those are things that we need to think about, if not tonight, but certainly as we move forward. That's all I want to say, really. Thank you.
And I would just answer some of that to sort of say that the part about when the applications were done in the 8 and 13 week, part of that is actually going forward as an answer to a question that I was asked at full council. So that will come out in writing sometime very soon. I think it's Monday that comes out. So I'd encourage everybody to read through that answer as well. I'd agree on the enforcement, and as one of the 3 people in this committee that are working with the enforcement team to try and look at how we can have the same sort of success as they're having with some of the applications with the enforcement team, to make sure that they're focused on what is important rather than trying to swim in a mass of different things. That is hopefully heading in the same direction. If you don't add anything to that, so Louise.
No, just to agree with what you've said, Chair. So the initial work streams came from Cabinet back in November 2024. That was the original 6 work streams. Since that point, 2 additional work streams have been added. One is to look at planning enforcement and one is to look at Section 106 monitoring. With regards to planning enforcement, there is a lot of work there in terms of no evidence provided. So what the team are doing at the moment is working through their processes, which are still the same. Nothing's changed formally with planning enforcement like it has done development management. But what they're doing is kind of stripping back and going back to process and trying to get more evidence-based information. So from requests that are made of them, having evidence provided to support that, to help the team out.
So the only thing I would add to that is trying to make sure that the point is saying that is evidence based, rather than trying to say just a complaint has come in and having to do a lot of work around it to confirm it. But it also needs to make sure that we're doing it legally. So it's trying to get the answers that we're doing it legally as well. I think is something we need to progress very quickly. But Councillor Glancy.
Thank you. Just to sort of voice my sort of continued bugbear that I've already mentioned this evening about applications coming in and they're incomplete. The information isn't in there, and we keep work. We go back to the applicant and their agent. Then we do a bit more for the applicant and their agent. Then we do a bit more for, and meanwhile, other applications are not being sort of processed basically. And I think I don't know, we have discussed this. We do need to get tighter with how we do the applications. And I know we've already had this conversation, Louise and Sarah. I think it's highly important that we do that, because to see an application come with 26, 27 conditions, it then has a knock-on effect. Well, how can we enforce it? So if it's right, it's right. And if it's not, it's not. We need to act, sort of not do the job for them. I think it's basically because that will save your time, and it's very, and then we can get through more applications.
Councillor Pritchett.
It's my favourite question, and I do appreciate we're potentially 2 years from unitary authority, the vacancies, contractors, allowing for that. Do you have a training stroke professional development budget in your department? Or have you from 1st of April?
There is provision within the corporate training budget for professional development, and it is something that we are reviewing as part of the ongoing works in terms of officer professional development.
Questions around not just professional exams, it's about other things, negotiation skills, time management, presentation skills. It's around that. And if you don't invest in career-long learning as well as that, and to have a professional department where you get all your exams and that, and not have this budget, and I think it's something to discuss with the management portfolio if you don't have it, if you don't have adequate.
I agree. I mean, as you know, I'm passionate about making sure we progress people through their career from every level to starting and moving forward.
Yeah, that is part of the sort of planning productivity plan, basically. It's identifying the needs of various planners and how can we enhance. You know, that is in there and it's all part of the plan. So yes, that will come out of the general planning budget and also general training budget, but that has already been addressed in the plan. Good.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Anyone to say anything to finish? No? I'd say thank you to everybody. We're getting in just before the 3-hour limit, so we don't have to do it. Yeah, I was just coming to that. Yeah, a vote of thanks to not the members, because yeah, but all of the members of staff that are having to say this. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the reports this evening. So thank you very much. And at that point, I'll pull this meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.